So, Bryce, why did the Libertarian cross the road?
Oh, why did he?
To return his copy of Atlas Shrugged to the library.
Oh, oh man, Anne Rind. Did I say that right? I always mispronounce that.
I'm not sure how to say it other than wrong, which was.
Oh man, jeez, now that's a cheap shot too. For the life of me, maybe it's just because I'm just too stupid, but I never really could understand the book or her whole thing, what she's about.
Have you? I never finished the book because it's like 600 pages long. I mean, it's Bible length.
Even the wiki doesn't make sense.
Well, that's just because you haven't been looking it up on Conservapedia. She's very popular over there.
Really? Was she?
Yep, absolutely.
I didn't know she was a conservative.
No, objectively, she's not. Although she has those economic principles, but it's the her social beliefs that gets her in trouble with the conservatives. She was. Well, episode 13, keep on trucking. So let's go ahead and run through our business here.
Indeed. Everyone, it's great to have you here. Again, if you'd like to reach out to us with any kind of comments or concerns, you can reach us at our email address, montanavoices@gmail.com. Our Twitter handle is going to be @Montana_voices. Our Facebook page is @Montana Voices Podcast. Our Twitch will be up this week. It sounds like we're going to be planning on doing some sort of premiere for the new year. Bring it in, my New Year's resolution to stream more frequently. It's going to be twitch.tv/Montana Voices, and you can always find each of our episodes at Montana Voices Podcast if you search for that on YouTube. And then in addition to that, our play credentials have been reinstated by the high-ups over there at Google. We're back in the saddle again with Google Play, everyone. So the top of the top of all your streaming platforms. You can find us now, right there next to your Joe Rogan and your last podcast on the left and your Rush Limbaugh. I think he's on there. All the big shots, we're up there too now.
Absolutely, on Google Play Music. For whatever reason, I have been meaning to send an email about this. We are not on Google Play Podcast anymore, which I thought was the same thing, so this makes no sense to me.
Wow.
Hopefully I don't have to talk to an actual person.
Wait, so
but if we're on Google...
There's a whole separate area of just podcasts?
Yeah, have you the Google Podcast app is you can get your podcast in the Google Play Music app for free, whether you're a Google Play Red subscriber or All Access, whatever they call it, subscriber. But there's also a podcast app dedicated directly to podcasts, which only features podcasts.
Wow, I didn't know that. Well, I'm going to have to go ahead and install that on my devices of choice right now.
And we, of course, are on iTunes as well. I think that covers all the major streaming platforms, I believe.
We're also on Spotify as well, aren't we?
Yep, absolutely. That's a new one, Spotify.
All the kids use that for some reason. I don't get it.
Wasn't it Pandora in our day? I used to know some people that had Pandora Premium and paid for it.
Yeah, back in my day, we used Pandora. We could only skip through 2 songs an hour, and we liked it.
That's the way it was, and we liked it. Well, we have no corrections once again. Our last episode was a sort of a Christmas egg because it was an extra episode middle of the week for our dedicated subscribers. It wasn't even on YouTube. We just put it only on our website. So if you want to hear about the War on Christmas or the War on Xmas, that is episode 12, our special Christmas episode.
Indeed. We got a little wild on that one. We didn't really have a set outline, and you can tell because we started to ramble quite a bit. You know, for special occasions like that, I feel it's all right to do things like that.
Absolutely. For for our dedicated fans, they should get something extra sometime. It's just us, even if it's just us rambling. But it's great to be back on a regularly scheduled activity, which is a good thing we can be back, because looks like internet was out for most of Montana for quite some time.
Yes, indeed. Ooh, man.
CenturyLink does it again.
When do they not, I tell you?
Yeah, still don't have a source of the trouble from CenturyLink. They said there was a major issue of... obviously there's a major issue. I'm not sure of the exact implications of it, but I understand 911 and voice service was interrupted for some times, and our guy in the FCC, Ajit Pai, how do you say his name?
Ajit Pai.
Ajit Pai.
More commonly pronounced as horrible.
Well, he is investigating this, and as usual, I doubt anything will come of it.
I'm sure top men will overlook this within a few months.
Yeah, we'll forget all about it, and we'll be on the next outage. I don't know. Is it CenturyLink's turns next, or is Charter going to go, or Spectrum, whatever name they're going by nowadays?
Well,
Is that going to
anytime you have big providers like this, you see people start to bring up the similarities between the two, and I could just switch to Charter, and then the next person 3 comments down was saying, well, they're no better. I feel, Jim, like we should go into the whole spectrum of these outages. Spectrum. Funny joke there in regards to Charter. But we should really, not necessarily deep dive, but at least just address like the types of outages from a common man's perspective here, what we've seen and the differences. Because these are not, this isn't the same thing as like what Charter faced, not too long ago here in Montana.
Well, as I understand, Charter doesn't have the same liability as CenturyLink does. Weren't most of the critical services typically on CenturyLink fiber or DSL? I think because Charter still they're not a business grade provider. Like you can't get that same type of service like you can through CenturyLink, in my opinion. I mean, they'll sell you something that's labeled business, but what that means to them is different than what an actual business connection
you can
should
send emails for work on it, sure, pal, whatever. Whatever you want to do with it, you do. Yeah, we'll write business on it. Your bill, sure.
And we will charge you for it. So.
Indeed, no. And yeah, you're right. This is kind of a tricky thing, but I think the Charter does fall into that spectrum to an extent because they are offering home phone service still on their packages, and because they do that, they pick up that liability then of being that 911 line provider. So
all these independents got the thinking right with the phone service and not offering it. So.
Indeed, from what I understand, when the Charter outage happened, that. Like, they have multiple lines that come into the state, at least more than just the one that got cut over the ravine that caused the outage. But everyone else that didn't power cycle, like, after that outage happened, stayed online but just had horrible packet loss because those other lines were just choked up completely. But the way the Charter had it set up there, I guess, on their system, from what I was told, is that anyone who had phone service set on their subscription was able to get provisioned on their modems, that they still had priority. Quality of service, I believe, is the term used for that, something of the sorts. But anyways, they were given priority there for phones in the sense that they would still work. But if you had just flat internet, like, nah, fuck you, it'll be back in a few days, maybe. And so...
Well, that prioritization makes sense to me. So you're saying if I'm a business customer with a voice line on my Charter service, which I do
saying
have
your voice might work, but like your internet, like that becomes second tier. But all voice traffic, like any kind of outage scenario like that, by FCC standards, like that becomes top tier. Like you got to keep that shit up and rolling.
Yep, absolutely, and it's sort of. The industry's changing, but everything's going over the internet connection. And, of course, the voice the Charter offers is just voice over cable internet, essentially, over the packets and waves and whatnot, as opposed to, dedicated standalone lines and connections for PBXs and such. So, it's still a bit of a different business from a business connection. Still have that disconnect.
It is, and and so I guess that's where you see the difference, though, in the types of outages here, though, is because since you just had the one line get cut there, the people who still had that priority set to their phones still were able to get out, and everyone else just had kind of shitty connection. And then if you power cycled your shit and you didn't have a phone on there, like you just weren't getting anything. So on the other hand, though, the CenturyLink outage is a whole different massive monster in and of itself.
I was unable to find any exacting details of what went wrong and what they did.
I have no idea what it is either, but looking at Down Detector,
they're pretty tight-lipped about it.
Yeah, anything on Down Detector that I saw about it, it was like the entire United States, like any of their major market areas, was like fucking bleeding red. So because of that, I saw a lot of people, God, we have to make sure we segue into conspiracy theorists on this here because there were quite a few of them still posting on Facebook. I saw, but what got hit there, it seemed like it was something to do. It almost looked like they had screwed up something with their databasing, something to do with certificates, because for an outage to hit that many things at once like that, that's like a lot of bad patches applied to a bunch of different boxes or something. Something around in that space.
Updated all of your boxes in one night.
Yeah, just like the intern came in and just decided to push the new rev. Like, yeah, Cisco just released it yesterday. They said try it now, so I just hit upgrade.
Well, we'll have to pull out that Simpsons meme of the old guy hitting the Cisco box to make the internet.
You know
work.
what? We should. I believe I actually have that picture somewhere around. Yeah, that'll be the thumbnail.
Well, that was a terrible segue because typically we have here at Montana Voices Podcast, we have some sort of format. We're going to review our old topics. Of course, we talked about rural broadband, and then I was supposed to segue into CenturyLink outage. So moving on to the next old topic is Zinkies on the greener pastures, no doubt. We also discussed the Blackfeet and specifically Browning, and a short update on that. Looks like there's new. The Montana legislature is making a bill to attempt to accurately count missing Indigenous people. So some progress in that direction from the government. You can't say a lot of the time.
Yeah, well, it usually takes a whole shitload of people dying or being trafficked or kidnapped in order for them to finally.
Well, that is exactly what happened.
Pretty much here. Yeah. So I'm glad we're finally starting to get our hands into the dirt on this shit a bit. So I'd like to see some change on that.
Well, Butte revitalization continues. There is a new Mexican food authentic in Uptown Butte over there that I didn't have on the list here, although I'm still upset about Best Burger in Uptown closing because it was the best burger short of Burger Dive that I've had. And they have closed, so
that is unfortunate. Speaking of closures in the hometown, I do have to bring up that I noticed this past weekend that Pizza Hut in Great Falls has closed their marketplace branch.
Really?
Permanently?
That seems unlikely.
No more. Yeah, no, I was blown away by that because they're a major chain, So I called in, and their phone number redirected me to the 10th Avenue store, and so I asked, and they said, yeah, it's been closed, and I immediately assumed it was for renovations, but then when asked, was told permanently, and so I put a lot of business into that place, so I was...
Yeah, that is unusual when a chain like that closes. Maybe it's just the fate of all businesses in Marketplace Great Falls, or that's sort of the stigma that came with, if you recall, Chili's and the Shoot the Moon people.
Indeed.
Over there.
However, Jim, that does not keep them from climbing right back into that used coffin, I tell you, because Black Bear Diner has recently opened up shop. I forget. I think they went into the On the Border. Let's see.
One of those restaurants. Was either Chili's, I think, is still there.
Yeah,
right?
Chili's is always there. It was either On the Border or Moonshine they moved into. I believe it was On the Border, but from everything I've looked at, it looks pretty fucking awesome. So I'm very excited to take the family down there and try it out. I'm really hoping that I'm not disappointed because the last pretty much any time I go to Denny's, it just never works out for whatever reason.
Well, the first thing is you're at Denny's.
Yeah, that's...
Some terrible life choices led you
So,
there.
yeah.
Whether you're working or patronizing.
And that's why I can never feel, super, aggravated at the people working there or anything because all I can think is, God, Bryce, you did this to yourself. You came to Denny's. You should have went to Perkins at least, So...
Should have went to Perkins. And, of course, for 24 hours there, your choices are Denny's. Tracy's is no longer. Still closed downtown, as I recall.
Yeah, she is shut down shop there. R&R still, if you're really...
really desperate. They're on par with Denny's. That's what you got to do.
I don't know. The R&R is a little... I wouldn't put them at Denny's level. That's a cheap shot. They're a local shop. So they deserve a lot higher than that.
They are, but at 3 a.m. you just need those hash browns to soak up the alcohol so you can drive home. So,
indeed,
and somewhere to sit it off for a little bit, get some coffee.
Well, that's the Montana way, I hear, Jim.
So back to old topics. We covered the Onion is coming to Montana, and of course weed, which we also covered as well, or disagreements with the federal government on that. For our new topics here, and this one might be a little bit more of a debate, because you can take my raw water from my cold dead hands, Bryce. You're an honest believer in regulation, and I am quite the opposite, more of a libertarian stance on things. So, issues we're going to cover on this is sales tax, of course. That came up again for some reason. You'd think politicians would learn, but no. The city spokesmen, specifically Great Falls' new city spokesmen that they're trying to hire, and what small communities can do to attract businesses. We're going to discuss the coding schools in Montana. We have a number of them. Education. Of course, the trucking protests taking place to the north, our at northern border where the wall should be built, and how we subsidize North Dakota by taking their very hazardous wastes, and other economic opportunities coming to Montana.
Well, we have quite the docket ahead of us here. Tell you what. Well,
let's dive into it with the sales tax. A Republican lawmaker has proposed that we have a sales tax again, and he seeks to decrease property taxes and put a 2.5% sales tax on everything, which is almost a cuss word in Montana.
Yeah, them are fighting words. I cannot believe this is still trying to go through. Like, I understand that you can do better and stuff, but I thought the taxation was theft.
Well, you're absolutely right, Brett. Maybe we should rename the episode here from "Keep on Trucking" to "Taxation."
I think we
theft.
should, as a matter of fact. Executive decision.
So it's been proposed by a Bozeman Republican. We have to name Mr. Kerry White, who we don't need to put a picture of him up because he looks exactly what you'd think he'd look like. So, 2.5% sales tax, and they actually had a sort of think group gather in Bozeman to discuss
Bozeman?
Bozeman.
Why not?
Is a commerce.
Why not Scobie?
Why not Scobie? Well, Bozeman seems to think, or this guy from Bozeman seems to think he, represents the state in the sales tax business. And
we need a lot more rep from the smaller areas of Montana for stuff like that. I think the big game-changing things, because that's the kind of stuff that's going to affect the small areas much more than people in the big towns, I think.
Absolutely, and places like Scobie, and especially those the very eastern states that are bordering North South Dakota and Wyoming, they get quite a bit of commerce from people specifically driving their dualies up here just to load up on goods without sales tax.
Indeed.
Billings gets a lot of that business as well. I bet you won't see Billings suggesting that either.
Not to mention, on top of that, all these people living in the rural communities around Billings and such that have to come into Billings to do their shopping, that's just an extra slap in the face there if they have to come into town to do shopping, and then you got to pay extra sales tax that you had to calculate in your head before you got to the register. It's just always been a nice added feature of Montana of, like, the price on the price that you see on the rail there, the bracket or whatever, the shelf, that's the word I'm looking for, is what you're going to have to pay,
Well, according to the article on KTVQ, that's Q2 in Billings, specifically on this, it is the rural legislatures that are vehemently opposed to this, that do not like the sales tax, and that's why it hasn't had success, because it sort of does come up every 5 years or so, and then we don't hear about it, probably because the people that suggested it are no longer in office. So I would hope that's the case.
I do recall this was a big thing with John Tester and Steve Bullock. We should really put out a link for that. They put out a really good video of them going to...
where they're in the drive-thru.
They go to Taco John's because everyone in Montana loves to go to Taco John's, And they order and they talk about sales tax. And, yeah, that pretty much... I think that one is what won that election that year.
Maybe, but it's worth noting that, I don't think the right... or their opponents had actually suggested a sales tax at any point. I forget who they were running against. It might have been Gianforte at the time, because didn't he lose his first election, then run again, as I recall.
Something like
that.
But
he might have discussed a sales tax, but he never said he wanted to propose one for Montana. So, worth pointing out there that it's at that time it was a cause in search of or solution in search of a cause, I think.
Just, yeah.
But I'm happy to be one of the 5 states without a sales tax.
Yeah, no, give me no tax or give me death there,
So that's Montana House Representative Carrie White from Bozeman. And you'd think Republicans of all people would understand taxation is theft.
Indeed, don't tread on me, man.
But those tax dollars, at least in Great Falls, are going to good things. Apparently Great Falls has room for a city spokesman.
Some would argue is not a great thing.
Some would argue that indeed. I might argue that as well, simply because other places like Missoula and Billings, they include communications as part of the city administrator or planner position, which is a position you actually need as opposed to a dedicated city spokesman. What are they like they're the cheerleader, or I'm not sure exactly what they would do. I do know you need a degree in communications to apply for this position at a nice $50,000 a year.
What is that? So, are you running? You're running the social media accounts, though, is what that means. Like, this job is doing that. You're running the Facebook for the city of Great Falls. You can paint up everything you want about this fucking thing. That's all you're doing, though, is you're running the fucking Facebook for the city of Great Falls. So, like, I think that $50,000's a little overpriced for that shit. I know that you guys have
plus all the benefits,
horrible communication with the people, and you have a lot of people pissed off at the city based off of just things that are changing with it. It seems a lot of what's been called the cronyism and the good old boys club. It seems, but I don't think that a communications director's job is like the way to the people's hearts on that issue. Like fix the things that everyone's pissed off about. Address the things that are considered corruption, fix the things that are getting people angry instead of adding these kind of positions that are over $50,000 a year. Oh my God. Yeah.
Plus,
I'm sorry. I'm offended because I don't make over $50,000 a year, and son of a bitch, if I wanted to do nothing job, I'd jump on this shit so goddamn quickly if I had a comm degree.
But if there is, if you need somebody to manage your Twitter, Facebooks, and etc., there is a Speaking Socially Media located downtown Great Falls, right by Crooked Tree, I believe. I just noticed them, and they will manage your social medias for you for, I assume, very competitive rates.
What? I didn't know about this. I have to go to Crooked Tree more. Do tell me, though. Go on. Did you go in?
I was there on a Saturday, so they were closed, unfortunately. So I only know what's on their website.
Why were they closed on a Saturday? That'd be like prime business day for them.
Yeah, social media. Well, I'm sure they have on-calls and stuff, but
you got to.
You got to. Well, yeah, they're a social media company. Just sprouted up. That was a shoe repair shop, and then sort of local grown. That store in the mall that does all the nutrition stuff, I forget. And then they were one of those shops. Yeah, I think so. So, yeah, they'll make a website and manage your things. They've got several things in the website. Speaking Socially Media Management, new business in Great Falls, which sort of a segue. This is sort of last on the list about tech jobs coming to Montana, which I'm going to tie into our episode 9, where we talked about Montana Power and all the fiber they laid down, which is still in use today.
That's excellent. Yes, we're talking about coding schools in Montana.
Yep, absolutely. And of course, Gianforte is excited about this.
Well, he's the one who pushed for it, correct?
Yes, he did do a push for it. It looks like we have a few of them, especially in Missoula and Bozeman. There's already one here in Missoula that, how many is it? A couple hundred people they're churning out every semester, I think it is. So. And whether that translates into actual jobs in Montana is probably another discussion, because some history, me and Bryce went to school together, and how many people from our class are doing anything like we are doing? It's a small number, I think. I haven't done a survey.
It is, but it's funny because that small number, a lot of them went through the same classes, though.
Yeah, that is true. Speaking of the good boys, old boys.
Indeed. Well, you get trained, you get hired, that's the perfect world there in any kind of job. You go to the vocational school, then you go to the factory after the vocational school that, is paid for by the factory sponsored or whatever. Anyways, regardless, though, it's cool to see this kind of stuff coming to Montana. I don't think there's going to be a massive push for it here. I hear the word coding and stuff thrown around all the time, and but it's very ambiguous to the extent for me of like what kind of things are they coding.
It is a boot camp type program. 12 weeks, it says. You can learn to code in 12 weeks, but according to the press release, I pulled this from the MontanaFreePress.org. Definitely worth checking out. I know we plugged them previously. But I see something about mobile development, but I see nothing else about languages or what exactly they're learning in here. But they do describe it as a vocational school for the new age.
Cool thing either way. I was actually looking at a thing called Scratch for my kids the other day. Have you ever heard of that?
I have not.
It's put out by MIT. It's supposed to be geared to get kids like ages 5 to 7 into coding, I believe. So we'll probably be setting up an account for that. Furthermore, I've always had a thing for the Raspberry Pis. I know you kind of have as well. And one thing I've kind of been looking at is trying to set up one of them little Raspberry Pi clubs here within the state. Because looking at all of the maps, there's nothing really within this area of the United States at all for anything like that.
A Pi club?
Something like that. Sort of like the Reddit meetups, but for Raspberry Pis.
Ah, I see. Well, I do have a Pi that's currently underutilized. It can do, just about anything you want
Indeed.
them to.
I don't know, just like, because when you start talking about, the coding stuff for the kids, I got involved with all the stuff I did by the networking classes that Great Falls High had back in the day. They put out Cisco classes. From what I understand, though, they've just straight up taken those out of the curriculum altogether, so you can't even do networking now, which is...
Have they? Because that is where I got started as well. CMR, so different school, but they also had those same classes.
Yeah, same budget there. Thank you, GFPS Levy, I assume, at the time, or, whatever. But, yeah, from what I heard, though, that was no longer there. I don't really have a good source currently at the high school I could ask. I'll have to look around and see.
I mean, could always shoot them an email. Is that Tracy Hauk or whoever she...
No, Tammy Lacey.
I get that wrong in every episode.
Tracy Hauk is the city commissioner.
City commissioner.
I think. I hope I got that right. I know she's with Paris Gibson Square Museum. She was the director there, I believe.
But speaking of schools, USA News ranked the best high schools in Montana, according to education scores and a few other factors, and Great Falls is the only major town not on the list.
Fuck yeah, boy.
But we're all being outdone by Gardner High School in Gardner, which
I'm a little surprised.
Yeah, some of these small schools are apparently doing very well, surprisingly. And I was surprised to see a Whitefish school on there because I know they definitely feel the taxation is theft and don't want no part of that. So levies are dead before they start over there. But as far as the top 5, Gardner number 1.
I tell you what, though, dude, I love the Whitefish area. Like the downtown area, it's so nice.
Yeah, I've spent a little time there, as well as the downtown Kalispell area. Not as nice as Whitefish, but definitely worth seeing.
Whitefish, it feels like you're walking through a movie set or something. It's just really pristine. It's like if you get a chance, if you're going through the state, stop in Whitefish.
But don't go now, because apparently everything other than Missoula at this exact moment is deadly to drive through.
Good point. Yeah, we didn't bring up the weather at all yet. I was going to ask you about that, actually, Jim. What is the weather like in Missoula this evening?
Oh, it's a balmy 32 degrees. It's a little wet outside, so the roads are kind of dirty, but it's fine.
Wow, it is snow apocalypse hell outside here in Great Falls this evening. At least I think it is. It was earlier. It's been blowing crazy Chinook-like winds. I'm sure you heard there was like 102 mile-per-hour gusts recorded up by Browning in East Glacier.
Of course it's Browning.
All the time.
They get the worst of it up there for those
fucking
winds.
Worst winds.
And they get that wind snow when it'll snow and the wind will just be around, or the snow will be around, but then those winds will pick up and it's like a whiteout blizzard all over again, even though it's technically not snowing.
No, it's not. It's just kicked it up from just 50 feet over. But yeah, no, it creates an insane hazard, and any of the footage you ever see from Browning during snowstorms is always insane. Like, God, why did they put them there? Of all the places in Montana, they could have given them any other place.
Well, it's one of the few places that didn't have any exploitable natural resources or current economic opportunities.
I just think, the wind hazard there is just horrendous. And then on top of that,
out of sight and out of mind, I think was the idea.
I have a feeling that that's, how there's a lot of garbage that gets blown up around the highway and stuff, and I feel like that's a portion of the issue there too. Is just like the wind just accumulates all of that shit.
Yep, and it ends up on a fence in Browning, and of course it looks bad on the town, but it's a long drive to Browning from where we're at. A couple hours for you and only 5 for me, but kind of long haul. There's trucker protests, especially up in Canada, where they had the thing that a 22-kilometer loop that they still had to expand because there were so many truckers that were ironically protesting for the pipelines. Apparently,
wow.
Canada is not building pipelines fast enough to keep Albertan truckers happy.
This blows my mind. Yeah, build it up, boys. You won't see Warren Buffett's fellas supporting anything like this anytime soon. Especially not CNR, their Canadian National Railroad.
Are they associated with Buffett? I'm not
sure.
Probably
because Burlington Northern probably hooks up with Canadian National at some point along the border, I assume. Because a lot of that,
well, definitely,
area, it's the same as it is with like the internet lines. It's just it's turf. These are our lines, but you can use them. We went over that previously, didn't we?
I believe so. Yes, I think we covered a lot in this series. So yeah, we definitely do connect to Canadian National Railroad. As far as the financials of that, I'm not sure, but I do know for a lot of very rural counties up on the High Line that Burlington Northern and Montana Rail Link respectively pay the majority of taxes for the county, because they sometimes have to pay per pound to haul through a line through the county, which is taxation is theft. We've been over that, but
yeah, it's insane. Tell you what, the rail line is king. I don't think it should go away either. I wish that we saw a bigger push for rail line infrastructure, especially for transportation, as opposed to what it's used for now for just freight. It sucks that we can't take the train from Missoula to Great Falls.
That does, and you'd think there would be a thing where you can just, I've always thought it'd be grand to, they have all these freight cars, you just, drive your truck onto a car and, lay back and watch a movie on your iPad while you get trained to wherever you're going.
Oh, it'd be a great service. Why doesn't Elon Musk do that?
The best of both worlds. Well, I just hope he's not tweeting. That's
his phone's been taken away.
I sure
they can't do it to the president.
They
can't do it to Trump because he's the president, but Elon, he's not the president. They can take his phone.
That should, because he's maybe objectively a good guy that we want to like, and we did cover that in the last episode, but he just has to stop being a dick on Twitter.
Yeah, no, he's just doing this wild shit that's just really unneeded and inappropriate in any capacity.
Speaking of Musk, not Trump, we should take away his Twitter too, but...
Jeez. So, continuing on with things here.
Well, with trucking related, you should definitely watch the movie Convoy. Related watching. It has Chris Christopherson, who, a Kurt Russell lookalike nowadays. He still makes music. It still has no remnants of an actual beat, in my opinion. He keeps no time at all. But a classic, and if you're into the trucking movies, you have to end it with Black Dog with Patrick Swayze and Randy Travis and Meatloaf.
Highly recommended. Meatloaf is the villain in the film, as I recall. Patrick Swayze does a lot of fingerless gloved shifting in this, and there's a lot. There's a lot of close-up shots of the shifting.
They probably had to spend an entire day of production time. It's just a guy in a truck watching a Patrick Swayze double fingerless glove shift. No, we need the aggressive downshift in the eighth. Get back in there.
And then, they match it with a lot of the clutch shots as well. You know, in all honesty, this was probably the precursor to the Fast and the Furious series.
Oh, they did it with a truck. This feels like Convoy meets Roadhouse, in my opinion. You know, trucks and Patrick Swayze. There's some roundhouse kicks. There's some violence. So yeah, but we probably spent too much time talking about why we're talking about Canada. Mainly because something that irks these Pacific Albertans up in Canada, the truckers, is that a Great Falls judge has blocked the pipeline, which is an Obama-appointed judge, Brian Morris from Great Falls.
Of course, Obama-appointed, which means that he's clearly leaning to the left.
Clearly, but he's anti-pipeline, or anti this Keystone XL pipeline specifically, and that runs through a little corner of Montana, and they were trying to run it there with a new terminal in Baker, which is why I'm a little surprised we haven't heard more protests in Montanans, or do our truckers actually have work to do? I
don't know. The Baker stop, I guess no, because Baker does have actually a huge oil presence. Now that I think about it, it's been a while since I've been through to Baker, but that's in Fallon County, right?
I believe so. It's in the upper right corner. Or
upper right corner is going to be your Plentywood and your Richland, I believe.
So that be,
it's going to be south of Richland.
Eastern, southern?
Yeah, it should be just north of Broadus, I believe.
Yep, so that's almost southern, eastern Montana. So, way out there, it's...
I mean, you get out there and the color leaves everything. It goes from black and white for everything, and it's a blur of whether you are in North Dakota or not at that point.
It does have that feel, but the old plan was to go pretty much straight north from Lincoln, Nebraska, and there was, of course, some issues with the tribe in North Dakota, and so they planned a more western route, going through Baker and through, pretty much straight up through Montana, so I'm seeing up into Canada. Alberta, which is the North Dakota of Canada, in my opinion.
I don't know. I can see why there's not a whole lot of protests going on for it there, because the truckers in Montana have a whole lot of other area to truck other than just Baker, and that's like one tiny little sliver of the state.
Yeah, and they don't even want to go there either. Even
I was going to say, it's a long drive out there, Jim.
It is. Well, miles pay. If you're not turning, you're not earning, as they say.
I mean, the closest McDonald's is what, Miles City?
They don't have one in Baker? And
I don't believe so.
And although I've said this before, when you're in a questionable place and there's a McDonald's and you're not sure...
Oh, no, they have one in Sheridan, now that I think about it.
McDonald's, but you can count on McDonald's always being exactly the same. So you got that going for McDonald's. If your choice is the dubious Chinese restaurant in Miles City or the McDonald's, I would...
just whatever you do, don't go to the McDonald's in Lewistown.
I had not had any trouble there.
Don't go. You won't have trouble if you don't go.
All right. Well, speaking of oil, apparently, Montana takes most of the radioactive waste from the Bakken, which,
not cool.
Yep. North Dakota has no licensed waste facilities for that. It seems to me that they're purposefully not licensing those because if they don't, it goes somewhere else.
Why does Montana have a license for that? Who thought that was a good idea?
Well, we're looking to expand, apparently. And this one I picked up from Last Best News, which is the Billings paper that, unfortunately, as of June this year, is no more. So this
was the Last Best News.
Yeah, it was. It was formerly the Outlook, and then they got together with Last Best News, which was a sort of a contemporary of the Electric in Great Falls, and also the Missoula Beat, or whatever they call themselves over here. So, but decided to throw in the towel on this one. But the site is still up, and then I researched it, and it's still going on today. North Dakota still hasn't licensed anything, and from what I'm reading about it in North Dakota papers, they're pretty happy with this arrangement. Although
it's out of sight, out of mind for them. Somebody else's problem.
It is. Another concern for North Dakota folks, and specifically people with oil wells. Apparently, when a property owner licenses or leases out their land for a well and whatnot, there is not really a limit to the lease, and some people, especially in North Dakota, have found themselves with some sort of wastewater pond that they're not sure what's in. this particular pond. And with the flooding they had last year, a lot of those were overflowing.
God, just what you need. I mean, you're tired as it is when you come home from work. You have to deal with the fucking radioactive pond. God, you can't put that water anywhere else.
Unless you can bring it to Montana, apparently.
Montana or your neighbor's yard if he's not home. But what if he's home, you know?
Yeah, I wonder if that's shipped by rail or how they get that here.
That's a good question. Well, hey, hopefully we'll have a pipeline soon we can put it in.
Yeah, so we already covered tech jobs coming to the state. Think another call back to episode 9 where we discussed Montana Power in more detail than I think most people would care for. But it appears by all measures that we are ahead of the tech game. It's like a mini Silicon Valley up here, or a frozen Silicon Valley, I guess you'll call it.
I find that a little hard to believe in a lot of senses because I see a lot of the quote-unquote tech companies, at least in Great Falls, and that's absolutely not true. But, I guess, if you look at, like, Bozeman.
Yeah, Bozeman and also, what do they have in Great Falls? They have that FCR place that does the...
that's a call center. It's just Asurion. It's the same shit.
Is it? I thought they did something more high-tech than that, but maybe I'm wrong.
They do, it's a call center for, like, Etsy and Blue Apron, I think.
Etsy has a call center?
Is this doxing them?
Well, we have no professional connection to them, so we can dox them all we want.
Absolutely. Perfect. Yeah, no, they totally. It's Etsy. Etsy's call center is in FCR.
I'm surprised Etsy has a call center at all.
Yeah, people need help. I don't know. What do you do on Etsy? Like sell shit that you make, right? Like here, I made these little angels out of like wet toilet paper.
Yeah, and then you sell it for $50. That's
here you go. Yeah, I made 50 of them for $20, and then here's the instructions. Call this number for support, and then somebody's gotta.
Some poor, almost minimum wage worker in Great Falls has to take that call. Jeez.
Jim, people you and me know.
Well, I feel unfortunate for them working back in a call center. I mean, but do they replace the jobs we, I guess, lost with Asurion or NEW? I'm not sure because there was some 500 people that worked there that some of which suddenly didn't have a job. And
yeah, I'm pretty sure that's basically what it is. Everyone's kind of skated out.
Yeah, those people went somewhere. I'm not sure where, though.
Across the street and 2 buildings over to FCR.
Oh, well, you think they'd use that same building, but I guess not. And that used to be...
No, it's still... The NEW building is still vacant and up for lease right now. If you are looking for a large commercial space, potentially for a call center, if you are looking to open one, Great Falls has one, and... it's a competitive market right now because I'm sure the FCR is slowly pulling the same kind of shit that Asurion would because it's a call center environment.
Yeah, isn't that same stuff they do is that they get a very favorable thing from the Better Business Bureau and Chamber of Commerce where they, get a no-interest loan or whatnot. And no, NEW did that. They had a big loan from the city, and as soon as that no-interest loan was paid off, they cut and run to greener pastures, I guess.
Yeah. God, I forget.
As soon as they were no longer contractually obligated to be in Great Falls, they were gone.
Yeah, there was that, and then on top of that, they said flat out, like, yeah, we're going to go somewhere else that's not going to tax us as much. And it's like big slap in the face because it's like, but there's the...
What taxes are they talking about?
I don't know, because you have now people clearly pointing out, like, see, we need a sales tax because the other taxes are too high. So if we had a sales tax, then all our other taxes would be lower, and we'll save money. You see, it'll be great. That's the only kind of reasoning I can think people would use for such an asinine idea as a sales tax. I'm sorry. Fuck me before you pay me.
So, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, they leased the building. I mean, on a property tax probably increases their lease amount a bit, but it's, I'm not sure what it is for that sort of a building, but it seems like inconsequential for what they're doing.
I'm sure it was a tax to operate within the state, because they pulled out of the state of Montana.
The business license tax?
I don't know. Like everything else we discussed on the show, I'm not a professional on this.
Yeah, neither am I, but I'm just dumbfounded that was their reasoning when I think our taxes are very reasonable.
Well, I mean, Amazon didn't set up shop here, so...
Well, we refused to name our town Amazon. We could have renamed Great Falls Amazon, Montana. Like, that's a true story. A town renamed themselves Amazon, or they were going to if they won the bid. They did not, so alas, there is no Amazon, Minnesota.
What a slap in the face to those poor people that live there.
Yes,
have to be born within the monster that is.
And then probably work and die for the monster that...
Buy all your stuff there. Die there. You know, it's the same as... I don't know how much they do it, but I've been in Walmart sometimes when the employees are in the back talking to other employees that are like off shift about like how they're being paid and stuff, and it seems almost as if like they're trying really hard to try to lean towards just paying them with pseudo Walmart bucks, you know. Like it's a debit card now, but like it's only a matter of time, you know, before it's a debit card, but like it's a debit card that's worth more if you use it at Walmart, and then it's a debit card that's worth less if you try and cash it out for cash. Like that's just how it feels.
And I believe New York. I know we're talking about New York again. We did that on the last episode with that Ocasio-Cortez thing. Awfully concerned about things in the East Coast, I guess. They declared that
she's a communist, Jim.
A socialist. Get it right. They outlawed that practice. It was McDonald's franchises were doing that, and they charge you or nickel and dimed you for everything. You want to withdraw your money, that'll be an ATM fee because there's of course no McDonald's ATMs anywhere, and etc. And for every transaction, they whittle you down to nothing pretty much. So yeah, they are trying to push that, and a lot of places do that as well. So. But that's not much different than, say a mining town such as Butte or Anaconda, or even the town called Phosphate. It's literally named Phosphate, where you work for the mine, your property is owned by the mine, the grocery store you buy at is probably also owned by the mine, or at least sanctioned by the mine, and etc. It's not much different than that environment.
Yeah, I guess you have a point there. It just feels more evil, I guess, when it's a corporation like Walmart involved.
The Anaconda company was any less evil?
As
far as I know, they literally
flavor.
killed people that disagreed with them. So, and that they bought politicians and literally handed suitcases full of money on the Congress's footsteps, literally right on the Capitol building. So
I feel like we need to go over this in a special cast.
They were pretty nefarious and pretty. The Copper Kings, were literally kings or Montana kings in their day. So maybe a future cast that'll be heavy on history.
Yeah, I think we should do a couple history pieces and specialize and go in deep.
So when some people complain about, it's the good old boys club and there's corruption in this town, etc., they appear to have forgotten the roots of Montana, that this is, completely this sort of back-scratching, back-alleys deal, and this, even nepotism and other terrible things is completely canon for how we do business in Montana, starting from before we were a state.
It's business as usual.
But we're looking to change that. Well, we talked about wages, and Helena Representative, Mary Cafaro, has some legislation coming through that eliminates sub-minimum wage payments for disabled people. I'm not sure how prevalent this practice is outside of Goodwill.
I was going to say, I'm looking at you, Goodwill, on this one, because I'm trying to think of who it is. God, what was their names? It was an old couple here in Great Falls. I won't dox them, but they worked at the Goodwill. It was an old blind couple, and they went on 2020 or Dateline, one of those reportive news primetime shows, and explained that they were being paid pennies on the dollar essentially for their labor. Then they went through the process of how they got evaluated for a raise, and then if they didn't do good on their evaluation process, they'd get docked pay. It was pretty sick.
So it's not doxing when they've already been named in actual stories. It looks like it was a CNBC article here, and it's Leland, Harold Leland.
Yes, that's it, the Lelands. They were really nice. I used to deliver pizza to them.
And I think I remember he's blind, as I recall, or almost blind, the guy.
Fully blind. They had a golden retriever that was really nice.
And they're earning a little over $5 an hour after so many years. So, yeah, not doxing if they've already been named. We're just repeating. And that was a CNBC source that I found there with that. But they're looking, or at least Mary Cafaro from Helena in Bill 2761 wants to eliminate that practice. And I'm not sure if anybody else does that other than Goodwill.
I don't know, just Salvation Army maybe. You can find like nonprofits that might try and get by on doing stuff like that.
And it's worth pointing out that the Goodwill's CEO is what's that? It's over $1 million. One moment here, 2.3 million.
Wow,
which
is
a
lot of paychecks.
Yeah, a decent chunk of change. Anywho, well, hopefully that practice is going away. But something that's not going away and coming. Have you heard of the man eaters? Or meat eaters? Not man eaters.
Yeah, man eaters. Yeah. The show on Netflix about hunting and doing manly shit. Like shooting animals and shit. They're moving their headquarters here to Bozeman.
And actually editing. The production team and production company is coming to Bozeman, which is...
that means you're going to be shooting animals there in Bozeman. Last time I went through, there was a huge-ass herd of elk out in some, field, right outside of town. So, field of elk, your days are numbered. Meat eaters are on their way.
They are, so it's it's a narrative, and you said that was on Netflix. I actually have not seen this one. I'm way behind in my Netflix. I also haven't seen that bird thing.
Oh, Bird Box. If you get a chance, everyone should check out Bird Box. It sucks.
It sucks. Well, the governor is very excited about it, which is sort of odd that Steve Bullock.
Bird Box?
Not Bird Box. The meat eaters. Not.
Oh, I was just saying he should watch Bird Box too if he hasn't. But yeah, why would he be excited about meat eaters?
It's exposing our assets of outdoors and waterways, landscapes, and of course it's Bullock, so he says our unparalleled access to public lands.
Oh, that's his thing.
Yeah, that's it's a lot of their things recently. So
well, everyone's thing is they want to take your public lands, but but you want to take my public lands, but he wants to take my. Don't go taking my public lands.
Wasn't that the new sales tax in this last election? It's they went away from sales tax and went to public lands.
Sales tax, public lands, term limits. That's the things we hear about all the time in rotation. And then occasionally, every 4 to 8 years, we hear about electoral college.
Oh man, so we can look forward to term limits coming up in this next election here. So. And it probably should be for the next, I guess, midterm when Tester's back up again.
Indeed. Electoral college, too, potentially. Keep that in mind, because next 2 years is when the election is next, right?
Yeah, 2 years, 2020 for the main general election. Tester's not up, but I believe Bullock and Gianforte are. Or not Gianforte. Oh, jeez. Bullock definitely is. I think Gianforte is going to be another midterm, because that's 6 years, if I remember right.
No, yeah, Gianforte just won, so who else? Danes.
Danes. All right. Well, perhaps it should be term limits. Danes is not as seasoned as Tester, so maybe that'll come back to haunt him.
In all honesty, they're all noobs there.
Noobs except Tester. This is his third term.
Still, though, third term, Bacchus was in since the fucking 70s, dude.
Started from the bottom, as I recall. So,
Senator Dilberg himself there,
So he's retired now, but does he even still live in Montana?
I mean, that's kind of a slap in the face if you're a senator for a state that long and then you don't live there. I mean, at least he was born here in Helena.
Yeah, 20 years, 73 he started. And then he got out in the late 90s, so...
No, he got out in 2017.
2017.
Oh, never mind.
Well,
never mind.
Not elected. He was ambassador to China, which is
2014 is when he got out.
An appointed position. So.
Oh yeah, he was in the Senate Finance Committee there. That was his bread and butter. He was watching over the banking, keeping the books in check there, and then Chuck Grassley took over.
Well, he's the longest-serving senator in Montana history, so you were correct there, but
I'm able to talk to you. You know, this podcast is due in part because of, so thank you for your hard work, I guess. More thank you to the linemen, but yeah, you too, I guess.
Yeah, the boots on the ground, those are the important things, and
absolutely.
Max Box or any of these guys aren't the one going out when the snowstorm knocks over your pole. But
indeed, in which case, I gotta say as well, everyone in Great Falls, don't go outside if you can help it. It's shitty out. Stay off the roads.
Yeah, so imagine if you're responsible for, one, hitting the pole, and two, making a team of guys come out when it's negative 15 over there or whatever it is, but
a lot of negative looks.
Should be chastised. Well, that's all we have in the docket for today, so that concludes episode 13, Keep On Trucking of Montana Voices podcast.
As usual, if you would like to hit us up on our email, it's going to be montanavoices@gmail.com. Our Twitter handle is going to be @Montana_voices. Our Facebook page is going to be @Montana Voices Podcast. Twitch is going to be twitch.tv/Montana Voices. Looks like we're going to be doing a premiere stream this New Year's Eve, I'm hoping.
I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, it's going to be some fun stuff. I'm really thinking I'm going to have something figured out by then. And then on top of that, if you'd also like to check us out now on our Google platforms, YouTube, Montana Voices Podcast, search for it. You can find it there. We're now also featured yet again on Google Play and Montana Voices Podcast, as well as your Spotify for you kids.